Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to Authentic Conversations presented by Transition Clarity. I'm your host, Adele Bernard, and I want to warmly welcome Mona Cooley from Cool Family Solutions. Welcome.
Thank you, Adele. It's nice to be here and to have a conversation with you today. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, because I think the work that you're doing in Cool Family Solutions is so important, and it's just something we need. So how about you tell us a little about how you got doing Family Solutions, the background of it, and where you are today?
Okay. Well, it actually was in 1995 when our daughter was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And she went on a hike with friends and came back a different person from that trip with all friends and everything else. And she said she had a near-death experience. And then through the week, I could see that there was changes happening with her, and she had the cure for age, and she was pacing, and she was staying up at night. And then on the Sunday when we had family dinner, all of a sudden everything broke. She had an episode, and she was so adamant that she had the cure for AIDS and wanted us all to be with her. And she bolted out of the house, and we had to restrain her and take her to the hospital. And that night she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Now, what I want to say here is that is not common. It is more likely that there's many people that haven't been diagnosed, or there's no clarity of diagnosis, but she was diagnosed that night. And because in the diagnostic statistical manual, which is what doctors go by in checking off, individual, pieces of what it is they're dealing with. And she ticked all of the boxes for bipolar disorder. That was the beginning of our journey. And I'm also going to say right here, our daughter is doing well, but I'll explain where we are now. But we ended up doing speaking engagements together. And something that both of us came to the point was that it saved our family. We were on a slippery slope of, our family was constant like this conflict, especially between her and I. And that's where it was having, her brother and two sisters want to flee the house and escape. And my husband just sitting there, not sure what to do with either one of us. And of course, siding with one and then the other and whatever was not going to help. But it was the beginning of our journey together, in the sense of she had to work on what she needed to work on with being diagnosed with bipolar. And I do have to say, she got the very best care and has had the best care ever since. So I want to say that how grateful we are as a family for that. But the missing piece in it, Adele, was we as a family didn't have the tools. We didn't know how to approach the situations. How do you stop having this conflict and lack of communication that was not working? And there's blaming and there's anger and emotions all over the place. And it's very, very heavy. And you feel, oh my gosh, what do we do? And there was no family programs, none at that time, because I had asked the psychiatrist, is there something for us as a family? What I can say in this part, we were one fortunate family, which I'll tell you why it's led to where I'm doing today. She was in her third year nursing, and I had to phone up the university to make sure that she had completed her courses, third year nursing. And this was in May. And I talked to the professor there, and I told her what had happened and this diagnosis. And she referred me to a lady who herself was bipolar and her children. And when I phoned this lady, I jumped on the phone immediately, even though I was tired, emotionally tired, because we got home from the hospital and everything. I wanted help. You're just desperate for that help.
Mhm.
And when I phoned her, and of course I was verbalizing everything, just everything was pouring out of me. And when she once I finished, she says, "You need to take care of yourself." Adele, that was not what I was expecting. Take care of yourself in all of this.
What does that
all
mean
this
with 4 kids?
emotions? And my husband was working in northern Alberta, and he was up, he was feeling all of this and felt like he was abandoning us. And I said, "You got to be joking."
Yeah.
And of course I lost it. I wasn't calm as I was today. I am today through all this.
Yeah.
And eventually we hung up, but bravely, bless her heart, she phoned me back the next day to see how I was doing. And I said, well, as much as I didn't want to hear those words, they were the words I needed to hear. And I really thought about it, because she did say, she's Mona, if you don't, you'll go down with her. And that impacted me big time. And it is so true, is that if we had, and taking care of myself was hard to figure out what that was, but it was taking time out for me, whether it's 15 minutes or phoning somebody just to talk this through, or whatever those little pieces were. And that was the beginning. So self-care became one of my pieces that were so important, because again, she was right. If you don't take care of yourself, you will be no help to your loved one. And they see the stress in you. They see it, they read it, everything. And that doesn't help them to be well. And she was getting the help. Now, we were fortunate. This lady took time to explain bipolar disorder, explained what was happening. And then at that time, I was going through Coach U University. I was starting to reach out to get some help and different things like that. And I was learning some tools, but we did a lot of trial and error. We failed many times. And a friend just sent a quote here the other day, but I'm going to only use one part of it, maybe use the rest. But the word fail means first attempt in learning.
Mhm.
And I love that. And that was by Abdul Kalam, Kalam.
Mhm.
And I thought, that is so true, is that we will fail, but we take it all so hard and personally. But we did, and we worked through it, and especially her and I, because it was a lot of the friction was between us, and that was exploding and impacting families. And that's the missing gap that is missed today, is in, the family that are supporting a loved one, mental illness, addictions, or whatever is happening in their life. The family that are supporting, if they don't have the tools, it is so much harder. And I'll give you the hard statement to hear. It took us 7 years to work through this, bit by bit, step by step, but we were determined to do it. And that's what led me into, I went back to Canadian Mental Health Association here in Calgary and said, we need to do something for families. I can't imagine families going through this without some help. At least we had a little bit of direction and a little bit of support, but that doesn't always happen for families. So they actually, a gal came on board, and we actually developed a 6-week psychoeducation program for families. And that was the beginning. But we realized after 6 weeks, that still wasn't enough. There was more. So we started a peer group in that time. And that was in 1997. that this all transitioned and started then. And that's when I started leading groups, and I was finishing up my Coach University at the same time, which was learning the tools that I really needed, or we as a family needed, especially this person. I had a lot of stuff to clean up here. It wasn't just my daughter. And you know, that's where that was. But today I can say where we are today, we're very fortunate. She's a mom, 50 years old this year, and 3 children, 13 to 20, and a husband that, oh my gosh, he is a blessing, because he was one that was very supportive to her, and we worked together as a family, and his family did too, and we're very fortunate with all that support. But she went through her cycles, the ups and the downs and everything else, raising kids and having babies, because it affected her. She was on medication, so medications were affected and everything else, but we all learned how to support her and how to communicate, how to listen, and have her part of the solution, not her feeling she's the problem.
Yeah. Well, and so that's very interesting, because I'm actually reading the Stephen Covey's next book about bringing the 7 steps into the schools and starting at kindergarten.
Yes.
And how it's just taken off around the world, and the little bit of intel I have on different school systems and whatever, and it's just like you can tell the difference of when you have a kid that's being brought up as leadership, and it doesn't matter if the teacher's in the room or not in the room, they're all taking leadership to be accountable for that classroom. And then on my side of what your story is with your daughter, is my coaching practice of transition is to say, okay, so listen to both sides, and I get the energetics of it. So for me, it might be, well, yes, she might have a diagnosis of bipolar, but you two have come in together to do this work.
Yes, it
And
was.
it's seeing the big picture of it all, like now you can look back at it and take a breath and go, okay, like I understand that this is our journey that we chose to come in to do together. But more importantly, that lady that you talked to right at the beginning was crucial, because none of us, men, women, children, we all are giving and trying to keep going from the depths of the well rather than the overflow.
Yes.
And I'm like I do this like all the time, because I used to burn my candle at 5 ends.
At
So
both ends.
bad. No, 5 ends.
Oh,
So
5
bad.
ends. Oh,
I
you
ended up in
really
the
had
hospital
something.
twice of absolute exhaustion. And so now it's like, if my cup isn't full, I don't answer my phone.
Yeah.
Right? Because even if it is a client coming in, I am no use to you if I am not giving from the overflow of the abundance that's flowing through me.
Yes.
And then I think about different people with bipolar, and you say the addiction world, which I'm very familiar with, right? Personally and extended, is the underlying is, but I was always the problem. I was the black sheep. It was me that didn't get along. And I'm like, that's not true.
No.
And they're like, well, that's what I was told. And I go, that's what you're told, but don't take it on.
Yeah.
That's other people's stuff coming back to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the part where you said, it wasn't her. I had my own stuff that was coming up. Yeah. Because that's why you're mom and daughter. So you could have that friction. Was it easy on the other kids and your husband? Absolutely not.
No. no. And it is so true, Adele, because, you know, with us deciding, and we both set boundaries with each other.
Mhm.
And because when I was going up to the hospital to see her on each day, but I was blamed. She blamed me for the problem.
Mhm.
And as we know, is it is in my biological dad. There was, you know, mental illness in the family, and bipolar was one of them. And that, it, you know, she blamed me, but that was where she was at. And after 10 days, that's how long my patience lasts. And that's pretty good for me because usually it's shorter. But that patience, and I decided that this is not getting us anywhere. So I went up the one day and she started. I waited till she started and I said, stop, no more blaming.
Yeah.
Yes, I didn't do the perfect job of being a mom and doing things right, and I made mistakes. Yeah, you betcha I did. And wished I could do things over. Yes, well, this is maybe our do-over now, is here. But then she had a boundary with me, and she said to me one day, Mom, you don't listen. And by the way, quit telling me what to do and help me problem solve. So both of us really tuned in to each other. And I really started listening. I thought I was. That's what everybody says.
That's
But
what everybody
God,
says. I
I
am a
know.
listener. And I'm
I
like, then
am
why
a
is your mouth
listener.
going?
Yes, exactly. We got 2 ears for a reason and one mouth. And that's what I had to learn. And thankfully I was learning how to listen and reflect back what she said and understand. Did I understand you to say this? And I know people have heard that maybe many times, but it's worth repeating because we don't take that time. We're usually impatient because things are busy, life is hectic, and lots of times we don't have the patience. And believe me, I didn't have the patience, and that was the hardest part, Adele, was for me to shut up, listen, and take my time coming out with what I needed to say or ask or clarify. But that was the beginning of change for our whole family. And thank goodness, like, it's hard to hear this, but it was our saving of our family, to be very honest, because we were falling apart and collapsing.
Well, and I think every family has that one nugget that is the catalyst of moving them forward, moving them to a different level of understanding and commitment.
Yes.
And more so, I think it's imperative as we move into this new world of understanding and love and community. It's not about the earth looking after itself. It's not about the government looking after ourselves, right? It is about each and every one of us being the droplet in the ocean of this world and being taken responsibility so our ripples will help someone else.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And
it is, and it's being accountable, and it's a word that I don't hear as much, but it is something we teach in our class, as well as accountability for your own self-development with the support of others, whether it's counseling or therapy or our groups or whatever we're doing. But the thing is, recognize within yourself, what is it that you could do different and better to, make a difference in the family? And if we hadn't stopped and did it, we wouldn't have got through COVID very well.
And you wouldn't be a family.
It wouldn't be a family. And
right?
believe
Maybe your
me,
daughter wouldn't have siblings anymore.
No, you know,
right?
there's so many things that I'm grateful for. And as much as we didn't like that at the beginning, don't kid yourself, but it was the difference. It woke us up. That's a wake up call. And we did step up to the challenge of the wake up call of how we were going to progress and how to work together.
See,
And,
what
go
what
ahead.
I find is fascinating is that how were there no signs up to this hiking trip? Were there no signs that you're saying, that's kind of odd?
It, there were signs,
Yeah.
but when you're not aware of signs or anything, she had mood, ups and down moods. There was different situations that were showing up
Okay.
through her teenage years, especially. And there were some of the signs and symptoms, like, I teach the mental health first aid, and those are things that are taught now, that here are some signs for you to be aware of.
Yeah.
And that, those were the things. But no, up until that point, she's a teenager. It's all that stuff going on with her, and that's the way we thought. And I thought, because what else would you know? Because mental illness was not dominant in 1995 in my books. And
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But it's also, I just think about even when I was growing up, and I'd be like, in the 70s and 80s, and you're just like, you're looking at a couple people going, you're off your rocker. And they're like, I'm not off my rocker. And then they go, because I mean, like I know for myself, like I was a teenager who had major anger issues.
Yeah.
And if I'm saying I fall off my rocker really hard and really fast, and I'm calling you out, I'm like, you're off your rocker, right?
Yeah.
And I also had teachers that were bipolar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And didn't know it. Like
Didn't know it.
and so you're walking into class going, are they smiling? If they're not smiling, it's going to be a rough class.
There you go.
Right?
See, you get it, Adele, is because you yourself have been through some personal situations with yourself
absolutely.
and everything else. And they are the best teachers. They're the hardest, but they're the best teachers if you're willing to open up and know that, okay, I need to do something different, or I need to learn some skills, or you're willing for that openness. I was open to, and actually what I did do is when I was at CMHA, I asked them, I said, could I go to the group where the individuals living with mental illness, could I go and be in the class and be able to learn from them and ask questions? And they got permission from the group, and I went in. Now, Adele, I can't tell you exactly if there was any certain words or anything that came up, but I remember sitting in that class and I was listening, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's things that likely listening did come up if I was to think about it, but that I wasn't listening, or they felt unheard or misunderstood. And that's where I learned.
Other kids, you got a husband, and anyone who's listening to this, it is not about blame. It's absolutely not about blame. And it's just, but the thing is that part of why I started my company was because I have the school of hard knocks.
Yes.
Right. And it was like
experience.
And I mean, from really, really young, I've always been guided. I've always been like, if I truly need an answer, I hear it.
Yeah.
Like, whether believe in God, I don't care. Like, I don't care.
Whatever your beliefs are.
Everyone has that intuitive ability to listen, to be quiet. And for me, it was like, even, recently, it's like, okay, have I lost my guidance? Like, have things changed so much? Like, where are we? And then I think about this podcast and getting the voices that need to be heard. Right. And right now, like, a lot of people are saying, well, why does gay pride need a month when mothers get a day, when fathers get a day? Right. And it's like, but don't think of it as a month or a day. Think about we're all just trying to live on this
It's,
earth and to be heard.
it is. And, you know, when the bottom line to this, and my 28 years in this field and learning through the hard
Mhm.
knocks, as you say, it's about the relationships.
Mhm.
If relationships are not working, it causes conflict.
Mhm.
And that's what was happening. Her and I didn't have that relationship working, and it spread throughout the family. And it didn't help with all the yelling and back and forth, and they wanted to escape. I couldn't blame them. To this day, I couldn't blame them.
Mhm.
But it's about relationships. And because we have a strong relationship today, and don't kid yourself, we've had our moments where we don't agree. I'm not, it's not
Well,
perfect.
no, but
I'm not
that's
expecting
just the
perfect.
parent daughter or parent child
Yes,
thing. Like
yes.
that's just life.
Yeah, but it is the bottom line. And I've said this many times, all these years of being in this field and working with families and working with
Yeah.
individuals, that it's the relationships. You think about it. When relationships are working within your family and you're there for each other,
Mhm.
it makes a huge difference. When it's not, where is everybody? In a different room, outside, anywhere but in the house, or being part of a family and having the fun and the rituals and the different things and everything. And that's why I have a statement now: families sticking together. But we need the tools, Adele. We need
Well,
the tools.
and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I used to think about growing up and like, yeah, you might have had a basement or you went and played in your room, but you always still heard your parents and their friends over. And like, if people were coming over, the kids came with, like, it
Yes,
wasn't right. Like, it was like,
yes,
and
it
then,
was.
and then it was like, and the houses never felt small, but then you think about them now and you're like, how did you ever do all that in that house? Because the
Right.
bigger they got, the more separated everyone got.
Yeah.
You didn't
Well,
hear your parents down the hall because they're on a different wing,
yeah. Yeah. No, well,
right?
we're
And so
an
you're
1,100
saying,
foot bungalow with 4 kids and a dog too, just to add to all of that
yeah.
fun.
But
But
then you think about, like, so where is the prosperity? Where's the affluence
yeah,
if the bigger house is, you're all separated?
yeah. Well, it is those relationships. And I, you know, today, when I look at my daughter, you know, 50 years old, raising 4 kids, and or 3 kids, sorry, I've added one more that I don't need to add, but she's done an excellent, her and her husband have done an excellent job and worked hard together. And those kids grew up with their mom, you
Mhm.
know, knowing that she wasn't doing well at times and everything else. But one of her goals, and because we were speaking, she laid out to me one day just to show me what it looked like.
Mhm.
And she showed where there was this bar where that was a good day. Then there was another step down and the bar went down the other way. This is a day I'm down and not. And then I go up a little and I go down a little. So she drew this all out. And at the bottom, and I have this sheet, I kept it. At the bottom was an MBA. That was her goal. And she was 22 years old at the time that she was diagnosed. And she achieved that goal 3 years ago.
Wow,
So
that's
I
phenomenal.
want to know that but the support made a huge difference. Like, her husband was wonderful, and he is, and his family pulled in to be supportive, and we all learned together what to do and how to make it work. And we went to our strengths. That's the other thing in families. We each have a strength. Adele, you have a strength.
Mhm.
You're doing what you do because
Mhm.
of a strength that you have, and able to help people make transitions
Mhm.
and having conversations or working through things, right? That's one of your strengths that you gained. And I've gained that strength of intuitiveness or reading
Mhm.
situations. And all of those things. And that's the thing that's so hard to see. Each of us have a strength in the
Well,
family.
and like I started with this podcast of like the Stephen Covey 7 steps. I mean, it's a way of being,
Mhm.
not doing. We've been doing too long,
Yes,
right? It's finding
yes,
those, as you say, the soft skills, like so you can type 100 words a minute, whatever. Are you
yes,
nice about it? Or you pounding on the keyboard, right? And so it's like taking it a step back and saying, okay, so what are those soft skills that make me unique? That's going to be make
yes,
me that leader, right? And so in
yes.
your daughter's case, like her soft skill might be the bipolar
Yeah, and it is, and
because she knows the highs and lows and she'll figure out
oh,
where the medium is,
yeah,
right? And instead of saying, like, her kids are going to say, but my mom dealt with it. Like, yeah, some days we're a little worried. Other days
yeah,
we're like, okay. Instead of all of us growing up saying, I don't know, mom was off her rocker. Like,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, and it is like, you know, like their kids, and like also like our other grandchildren know too that there was these struggles. And but the thing is, it's being there for each other. I have 7 grandchildren all together. I'm very fortunate. Oh, by the way, I've got 2 grand dogs and 2 grand cats, just so I can add that. So they keep growing in many multiple ways, but it's all about being there for one another in this whole, and this COVID upset all of us. It
Yeah.
isn't anyone, we all face something in that time. But boy, I'll tell you, I'm grateful for the family and friends were there and stuff like that, and we could be there for each other through that tough time,
Yeah.
because it was very tough. But yeah, us progressing and so forth, it makes a huge difference for sure.
Well,
But
and I'm even starting to look at it differently too, of the time of, like, I mean, everyone's talking about the fires and the
oh,
devastation and stuff, right? And it's just like, if anything we can learn from the last 3.5 years is
yes.
that the fires must come for the rebirth to happen.
Mm,
And I feel as a world, we're going, like, we have started, we're in baby steps of the biggest rebirth, right,
mhm,
that we've ever seen. And
mhm.
like our parents, our grandparents, whatever, like they had their rebirth after the wars. They had,
Yes,
right? And
yes.
but I think this one is slightly different. It's only my perspective. Like, I'm
Mhm,
not saying anyone has to believe what I'm saying, but in my perspective, it is the rebirth of self
mhm.
more than outside.
Yeah, it
We
it
have
is.
to come back to our heart and follow our beliefs and our way of living. And
Mhm.
in that, we will be our most authentic self
Yeah.
that will actually build a better, safer, more beautiful world than we've ever seen.
And that's a good point you say, in the sense of getting back within us. And that is so important. You know, there's I there everyone, I'm sure, has gone through some struggle or challenge or upsetting situation, and how it affected you and everything, like, and I've been around it, and I've worked in the area where individuals were on the street and homeless and not having support systems and everything, and I worked along with them. And I learned so much from them, because the resiliency they had to even be where they were sitting in front of me. I'd say, boy, you you're amazing. And you may
Yeah.
not think you're amazing, but you are amazing that you're sitting in front of me and telling me this and what you've been through and how you've gotten there, and that we work together. And all I was doing was the biggest thing they didn't get. And I've heard it so many times, Adele, I don't feel heard and understood, and it feels good when I am. I thought, wow, it's that simple, but that difficult.
Yeah.
It's all we want out of
Well,
all of this.
and that's what anyone wants, right? Is to
Yes.
be heard. And
Mhm.
and more than being heard is to be understood.
Oh,
You
big
might
time.
you might totally disagree and they're coming from left field and you're like, did
That's
I just
okay.
hear
We
that
all have
right?
differences of opinion, right?
Right.
It's-
And that's what I love too, of like being in a room when there's 10 different opinions on the same topic and you're like, oh wow, this is learning. This
It
this
is.
is what gets me my mojo, because I'm just, and it was funny because like I remember times like, oh, I'll stand in line for everyone. They're like, what's wrong with you? And I go, I have, the party starts in the line before the concert.
Mhm.
Right. So by the
Mm.
time the day the concert happens, like I've met 50 people in line. I'm going to have a huge party. Right. And so because of all the conversations that brought out and all the different,
Yeah,
like, well, why do you like this band and why, you know, like, or whatever. Right. And
it
it's
brought it.
whatever it
Yeah.
is. But I mean, I'm going to bring it back for a second to when the woman said, you have to look after yourself.
Yes, you do. Yes, you
And
do. Yeah, that's
that
right.
has been,
Inside.
that has been the driving force for me and anyone I've worked with in the last few years, because it's like, you can't give what you don't have.
That's right. Well,
And if you think you can, you're going to end up with cancer. You're going to end up with a heart attack. You're going to end
yeah,
up with a stroke. You're going to, and until humanity understands this,
yeah,
we might not have humanity.
yeah. Well, and I think what's important, like, and I appreciate you having podcasts like this, Adele, and we all have these conversations no matter what field we're in.
Mhm.
And having these conversations and hearing different perspectives. Everybody has a different perspective.
Mhm.
And that's the one thing with families. You think if you got, you know, 7 of you in a family, you all have a different perspective of the situation, of how you're approaching it, how you're looking at it, how everything. But we don't take the time to understand the perspectives. We
Mhm.
may defend, which I was really good at one point, but where did that get me? Didn't get me very far. But once I started listening and hearing a perspective, and somebody on the outside looking in can see a different perspective.
Yeah.
Like our son-in-law, my daughter's husband, he told me after we went through some of this, and he said to me one day, he says, when I came into your family, you know what I felt like doing? I says, what? Jumping out the window, because we were doing this so much and we didn't see it. We didn't see it. We didn't hear it. Yet we got along. There was times we got along, but those were, when those tough times happened, that's what he felt like. And I thought,
Well,
wow.
that's even a different perspective of kudos to him
Oh,
for
to be honest.
seeing, no, but for seeing
Yes.
before you guys could see, you guys could heal this relationship. Because he
Yeah.
could have said, I'm not of the family, because like I can't, I'm not dealing with this. Like, how can I be married to her?
No.
Right.
Well, and the thing is, you know, he'd come over for dinner and have a steak dinner. He was quite happy to be there to have dinner with us. But the thing is, it's his perspective was, I valued it because he, you know, he just had that demeanor about him that was caring and compassionate, but honest. And
Yeah.
good for him to be honest. And that's hard to have, as well as those honest, those hard conversations of honesty they're tough ones, but they are the foundation. If you can have those tough ones and work through them and everything else. Like, I've got many stories of our own family, but the thing is, it was sitting down and really having those conversations, but really listening. And there was times I didn't feel heard and understood. So I really got to feel what it felt like.
Mhm.
And in those type of things. So it's so important, but having those tools, I call the one tool just to share with you, love, which is perfect for listen, understand, and validate.
Oh, I like that.
Because validation was the other piece. And I bet you yourself, living through your lived experience, how many times were you told maybe through your life what you did well? And
Yeah.
validate, I really appreciated how you did this.
Yeah. Well, different time.
Different, it was a different time, but
Yeah.
that was so important in that part, just to hear that somebody appreciated that little piece. And sometimes it's the hardest piece to see.
Yeah.
And when you're going through tough times, is those little nuggets out of there.
Well, and it's also like knowing when to rock the boat.
Yes.
Like when I'm working with parents and they have those teenagers that, you know, by and large, they're good, they're whatever. And it's like, I can't believe they did this. And I go, yeah, drop it. What do you mean drop it? I go, not a battle you want to go down. Just like, you know, because not without crossing the line of confidence, right? I have to honor the child as well as the parent.
Yes.
And just be grateful that only this happened and not that, right? Like,
No.
you know, because it's like they made the best choice they could make with what they're given in the situation, and let that one go, because this isn't something that, you know, like, is it a one-off? Maybe not, but just let this one go. Don't
Yeah.
you know, put the battle on for this one. Yeah.
Well, and you said something about too, we do the best we can with the tools that we have at the time.
Yeah.
And we didn't have all the right tools. And when we're all growing up, I don't know about you, I made many mistakes in growing up. And I know my parents, there were times they challenged me on it, of what I was doing and making decisions and everything else. But oh no, I go ahead. Well, you learn fast when it didn't work. You learn fast and that was all part of it. Is, you know, I wished I knew what I do today, knowing to raise kids. I would have been different. You know, I would have handled it different and approached it different and everything else, but didn't have the tools. I grew up on the farm, and the farm was you feel tough that one day, oh, get up, get at it, and get over it. That was the attitude. So guess what I had the attitude of coming into raising my kids. Well, okay, you're not feeling well today, but we got to keep going. But you don't take the time to have that caring moment, you know, but you know, but we do the best we can.
Well,
And
and if we felt that we knew it all, or that we'd do better than our parents, no one would have kids.
Yes.
Humanity would have stopped. How many generations ago?
Yes. Well, and like I say, I grew up in a family that, you know, there was toughness expected, but that wasn't all bad. But there were times, yes, I would have liked to have been heard and understood, but they did the best they could. They were very good to me. They were a caring family, and we have lots of laughs today over some of it. We call it out sometimes, but the thing is, it's, you know, when you don't have anything to go by, or anything different to see, or what you could do different, well, how would you know how to do different? That's why.
And it's also like, you know, like how you have the 4 kids. You could probably write a book on each of their experiences.
Oh yeah.
That are totally different under the same roof.
Yeah, 4 kids, and 2 of them are twins. They're identical twins to go with it, but they still had those little pieces about them that were different, right?
Like I used to say that with my sister. I'm like, are you sure you grew up with me? I think like we have totally different parents.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And it's only now as we're older, we're going,
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, I've heard parents, I've heard individuals say, or parents say, well, they're in the same family. Yeah, well, that's fine, but they all have their different personalities because, different personalities are coming out of the mother and dad, or the
Yeah.
environment can be an effect as well.
And how much they're friends and their families,
Yeah,
right?
it all plays into it. Everything
Well,
plays
and it's
into it.
interesting because on a previous podcast with Peggy, she's an
Yeah.
astrologer, but she was also a
Okay.
police officer for 26 years.
Yeah. Oh,
Right? So take that
wow.
dynamic. And one line she said was, oh, well, the Geminis are the reporters of the zodiac. And then the Sagittarius are the editors.
Oh,
And I went, pardon?
wow.
And so she repeated it. And I said, that explains my relationship with my sister, because she's kept on feeding me all this information. I'm like, what am I doing with all of this?
Mhm.
And she goes, I don't know. And she'd flit off doing her thing. And I'm like, oh, I'm the editor. And I
Right.
go, oh, who cares? Or, oh, I like this piece of nugget.
Yes, it is. And that having different, we're different species, but different pieces of us show up. And then there's more explanation today because of research and studies and everything else. Thank goodness, because we get to learn more about ourselves in this whole process. Like, I'm a Leo. Well, you know what Leos are like. They're pretty straightforward to the point. And, we do have the compassion in the heart. And I have to remind my family
When you
every
choose
once in a
to,
while, yeah, whatever. Used
right?
to.
But if,
Yeah.
but if you interrupted Leo in his cave, there's no compassion.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So you see,
Yeah.
but it's, we don't want to be the same, Adele. My gosh, it'd be
I
boring.
know, but I'm just saying, but understanding the person's individual dynamics.
Yeah.
On yourself and others around helps
Yeah.
a lot.
It does.
Right?
It does.
Because, like, for instance, a person who is an air sign, right? If it's a windy day, they're very not grounded.
Yeah.
Even if they tried to be grounded. So having that deep, like, hard conversation isn't going to happen on a windy day, unless you do things to offset the natural outside forces so that they can handle what is coming forward.
Yes. Yeah.
And like I used to be related to Connect Charter School in Calgary here.
Okay.
And one day I walked in and I'm like, that's the math teacher, but she's in the gym. And kids are running around and I kind of went, what? And she goes, they wouldn't sit in their seats, so we're running timetables. Right? And I'm like, I love this school. Like, where was the school for all of those kids that just couldn't handle school?
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
if you're trying to do math and they got ants in their pants, so she's like, bring them to the gym. Let's run them out.
Yeah. Yeah. There was all that different flexibility, wasn't there?
Yeah, and it's just it's amazing. And so when you think about mental health and you think about how can we best serve self and others in this soup of what we call the new mental health, there's so many factors. There's environment, there's nutrition, there's peer groups, there's like just like
there's so many pieces. And I think, and two, it's getting more complex. I was just talking to somebody here today about how situations or families, there's more complexities within families today. And from where I first started, 28 years ago, you see the different layers that are happening and everything else. Like I'm adopted, so there's different layers with me, myself, through this process. Yeah. And But the thing is, the family piece is very complex because there's different personalities, different experiences, different everything. There's so many things. And how do you get that family to at least get on close to on the same page or stick together and bring those personalities? But it's recognizing each other's strengths and listening and those perspectives. And I guess we're drilling on this today a lot, but we need to be accountable to for our self-development in us. Like if I hadn't kept on with my attitude when our daughter was diagnosed and get to the point and all of this and didn't make any changes or anything else, we wouldn't have a relationship today. And that was one thing that was so important to me, was to have a relationship with my children, my family, my members, my friends, whatever they were, but especially my family. And if I hadn't made those changes within myself, I likely wouldn't be talking to you today about this.
Well, and how much of that, like, now that I realize you're adopted, how much of it that wanting that close-knit family bond with friends and family, like, how much do you think stems from being adopted?
It could be, and I know I felt for myself in that time when I realized I was adopted, I felt alone. Even though I had family and friends around me, I wasn't alone in one perspective. But the other perspective, I was alone inside, and I couldn't figure it out. At one point, I couldn't figure this out. And here it was, one of my girls was doing at school, and they had to research something. And of course, my one daughter says, "Mom, do you mind if I do some stuff on adoption and everything?" "No, please do. And can I read the book you're reading?" And when I read the book, there was, and it was my first realization that you being adopted is you feel removed. It isn't that others around you have you removed, but that's what you feel. And you feel that emptiness that you can't figure out. But once I figured it all out, I was very much loved by many of my own biological parents, even though they didn't marry each other, they were loving me. And I ended up with 5 families. My gosh, how lucky am I? I got my
so you that was my next question, is did you meet your biological family?
Yes, I did. I met my biological dad and his family, and was very connected. He's passed, and his wife passed because my biological mom and dad did not marry. But but his wife was very good. I loved her actually very much. She was a straight to the point lady, and we had many good conversations while she was alive. I do miss her through this, but she once we all connected and whatever, I was invited to one of their kids' weddings and went to it.
Wow.
Which was really nice. And I went to her and my stepmom, and I said to her, I says, "I'm very grateful that I was even invited to the wedding." She said, "Well, if we didn't like you, you wouldn't have been here."
I love it. Love it.
And I thought, I couldn't have. That's what I loved about her, is that she was so straight with you, but caring. Like, she was just being honest. And I thought, if that's honest, there was no tiptoeing around what she felt. But so I was glad I was liked to even
well, and talk about music to a Leo's ears. Like, just tell me straight. am I
Yeah,
coming out of my
yeah.
cave or not? If I'm not coming out, leave me alone.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And I'm fortunate to have my mom alive today. My adoptive parents have passed, unfortunately, but my adoptive mom, she's 94 this year, and
Wow.
she's quite a high-spirited individual. And we, we get along. We had our difficulties in the past, of
And this
course.
is your bio mom?
This is my biological mom, yes. And so I have that family that I'm very connected to. And so I'm very fortunate that I was able to have my adoptive family, my biological parents, even though they didn't marry, I had those families in my life, and all their cousins and whatever around
And did
stuff.
they all meet? Your biological and your adoptive?
Yeah, well, and I have quite a story, and I grew up with my mom being my sister, but she was my mom.
Oh, I used to know those kinds of families.
But the thing is, like I said, I'm being grateful, and I'm being very serious, because I've got the relationships with them. And it isn't saying that we didn't have a difficult time through those times. We did. And I did too. But with my daughter opening up that door to understand that I was not alone in this feeling, but that I have been fulfilled. I don't have that empty feeling. Once I learned about all of our, my background and everything else. So,
and I've heard it differently from adoptive parents, adopted people that didn't know their biological parents.
no, some don't.
Of saying like my one friend was saying that when she had her first son, that it was the first time she looked into someone's eyes that has the same blood, and it was a different feeling.
Wow.
Like she loved her family, she loved her siblings and everything, and it was when she first held her first son, and she's like, this is what it feels like to have blood in someone that I know.
Well, the other understanding is when you're adoptive, know your parents, your biological parents, you have some of those traits within you. I totally understand me more than ever, because I have a bit of my mom in me, and I have a bit of my dad in me. But that's the part that you start to figure out those things, who your personality is. Like our kids grew up with their parents, knowing their parents, and I'm sure they question themselves, oh my God, somebody says they laugh like mom, and they think, no, my mom, because I have quite a laugh when I get going. But the thing is, we have all those traits, and our kids grew up learning this along with me in this journey. And but it's been a very fulfilling journey. I'm some, as you said, some don't get to know who their parents are.
And to take it on a different tangent, whether you believe it or not, we choose the parents to come in, to be birthed into.
So that's
so
what they.
I've heard
that.
The blueprint that we are here to learn.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I'm not adopted, but everyone thinks I am, because I'm fascinated with the show. Right? Like, where do you come from? I don't know. Let's find out. And I know all my family. I know the history. I'm like, oh my God.
I know the history. I know.
And I still am more fascinated, because I understand that I can't be who I am today as that conduit to healing, and the transition coach that I am, and whatever I'm doing, if someone in the blueprint, however many generations back, wasn't that person. Right. And I used to get teased about I'm the doctor without the degree. And I'm like, oh, I just talked to grandpa. Like, I don't need to go to university. Right? And they
Just
just shake,
talk to him,
yeah,
right?
I just talked to my
Yeah.
grandfather who is a doctor. So
Yeah,
and they just shake their head because I
I,
never met my grandfather.
yeah, well, there is actually in my, I know of a gal where they do generational, and actually it's quite a good book. I'll just grab it there for you for a minute. If I find it here fast enough.
But how fascinating.
Oh, there it is. It Didn't Start With You is the book.
Oh yeah, I've
And
read that.
Have you read it, Mark
Yeah.
Boland? And I
Yeah.
actually took the course, and I was fortunate that an organization that I'm part of, they provided that, that opportunity to
Yeah.
me to be able to be in it. And I was excited because I don't know, I know more about my biological dad, that history, but I don't know as much about my mom's history, other than, we've got, there's certain things that I do, but not a lot. But this book was, when I went through it, it were exercises like lessons, and
Mhm.
I did the lessons. I went through it, and it was good for me because of where I'm at, or my history. It was so enlightening, and it didn't start with you. There's things that you've taken on that you don't realize you're taking on. You've taken on certain things, and
Yeah.
it's just fascinating. Like, I love this type of thing, to dig into these little crevices of life to figure out certain things about yourself.
And it's interesting because I remember reading the book and going, oh, I really should go back through it and do it, give it more due diligence. And then it was like, why? Just ask and you know the answers. And I'm like, sounds good to me. Right? Like
Yeah.
why upset the apple cart when you don't really need
Yeah.
to? Because
Well,
like in my life, when I need to know an answer of why is this happening or what's happening here, it'll be like I'll go to sleep and I'll dream and I'll get the whole picture and I go, okay, thanks for sharing. And then I know
yeah,
how to move forward. Do I have to
right.
big it all up and make a big scene of it? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But it's
Well,
funny that you're bio mom and you can't figure out more on that side.
yeah. Well, I have enough, I guess, in my life that I'm quite content.
Yeah.
I was, determined once I was told I was adopted, but I wasn't told right at the time who my parents were.
Mhm.
But I was determined, and it did come up that I finally said I want to know. And of course I was surprised about what I was told, but it still was, it was good. And I'm grateful to this day that we have this strong relationship and growth. And like I said, I gained families. I didn't lose families, I gained families. That's how
Which is so incredible for the fact of what a pillar to be able to do what you're doing now.
Yes.
Right? Because you came to what you're doing now as a wealth of embodiment of all these families of like love and caring and we stick together like
Yep.
we're in those crazy times like right
Mhm.
and how grateful to be able to like grow up with your bio mom
Yes.
without knowing this bio
Without
mom.
knowing, but did. And and we have a very good relationship. And like I say, her daughter and son, a sister and a brother to me, and everything else. And then on my dad's side, there's two girls and a boy, so, and more sisters and a brother, and everything else. So it was,
and it's interesting because you talk about so inclusively like I'm just extended. I get to hug more and more people where
yeah,
I've seen it over and
yeah,
over again of I don't belong. I don't belong. Like, I'm the only one from the original couple. And I'm like, well, it's your choice.
See, that's the piece that showed up before I knew, is I didn't know where I belonged. That's the one question I did have, where I belong. I felt different. I felt
Mhm.
different. I couldn't figure, those were all the mysteries to me, but all the answers came to me in time. I guess the right time. There is a time that it comes. And when it all flushed out of all of this, I did belong. I belonged to a bigger group than I realized I belonged to, but I felt different. I felt out of place at times, and I was trying to figure out where I fit in and what I was doing and everything else like it was. But my daughter, that book, that day was a whole new revolution in my mind.
But it's also, you chose to, I'm going to choose to belong. I'm
Yeah,
not going to keep myself separated, because you could have
no,
stayed separated. You could have said,
oh,
nice family, I'm the only one.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, I'm watching the time, and we can talk for hours. And we can do another one, that's okay. But I want people to understand that if they get in touch with you, like, you have a 12-week program or 10-week?
It's a 10-week program,
Okay.
2 hours a night, and that's what we do. And it's for individuals or individual family members that are supporting a loved one with mental illness and or addictions, or those pieces. Because again, it's the missing piece, the gap in the system, where the family is not looked upon as needing tools or whatever, but they do need the tools, and we provide those tools in order to be supportive, but also have their relationships. And they can get a hold of me on Cool Family Solutions, and my website's up. It's going to be under renovations, but that's okay, it's still there. I'm revamping a few things, and things are happening, so you'll see a different in time, but it's www.coolfamilysolutions.com. And and I'm Mona Cooley, as was introduced today.
Yeah, and I'll have everything in the show notes.
Yeah. And it's got a bit of our background there and history, and I've been very
And
fortunate.
would you say this program is a added bonus to, like, say, Al-Anon?
Yeah, it's Al-Anon, and a lot of these programs, a lot of services have their place. What happens with this is, because it's the family, that we're digging a little deeper and giving them tools. We have 6 tools, and one in particular is a resiliency tool, and it's a profile that they have, the beginning and near the end, and profile of their dynamics within their family, their community, plus them, the emotional intelligence pieces and everything else. So it's a profile of your strengths, or strengths unknown. That's the other part, and what you can develop. So when we do this at the beginning of the course, before they start, it's going to look like this. There's going to be red and blue, and then green and darker green. And then of course the darker green are the strengths you have, but the red is the unknown. And it's not to look at as a weakness. It's unknown and hasn't been developed. But because of our tools, we have tools that are attached to that. And that's what helps to develop those strengths and find the strengths in yourself. And you can find it in your loved ones as well, and everything else. So lots of tools. We just dig deeper into situations and provide a perspective for them to hear, for them to find, to do something different, to have a different outcome, not the negative, but more the positive.
Yeah. Well, it sounds wonderful. I'm so grateful that you're on the show today. Anyone wanting to get more information, like I said, the notes will be in the show notes, and we'll wrap up another conversation.
Thank you,
Thank
Adele,
you.
for inviting me today. What a it went in a whole different direction than I thought, but that's what I love about these type of conversations. You learn even more about people, and I learn more about you, and thank you for what you do as well.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate you.